Freud's early theories of personality were focused on issues of people's pleasure, and he thought that pleasure was about decreasing excitation. He thought there is some kind of energy and it needs release through eating or sleeping and so on. And he thought this is that feeling of pleasure. When he met those war veterans who had the trauma experience, he began to rethink his theory of personality. He began to pay more attention to the patterns that people had. They would do things repeatedly, even though these activities didn't give them pleasure, but people had the habit of doing them again and again. Like I said, he saw this with war patients with their trauma, but you could also think about this with addiction. People drink alcohol repeatedly and don't stop. They maybe have an addiction to smoking. But even in ordinary situations, people don't have traditional addictions, but they have the same kind of patterns that are not healthy. So, for example, maybe they will exercise and then do binge eating. Even that example is maybe too extreme. Maybe what they will do is they will procrastinate. So they know they have some work to do and they delay until the final moment. And you can see them repeat this pattern again and again. Well, this isn't an addiction, not traditionally, but it is an unhealthy pattern. What Lacan is trying to focus on in this chapter and in previous chapters and subsequent chapters is the work that Freud is doing when he is changing his theory of personality, updating his theory. So not only do people do a lot of activities for pleasure, they also do them because they are stuck in a familiar pattern, some kind of loop. And they haven't figured out why they continue this pattern, even if it's an unhealthy pattern. So that is what we continue to focus on in these chapters. And in trying to come to terms with this theory of personality, Freud is having to think about them in new ways. There is no ordinary biological explanation for this. Freud was trained to study the brain, but he can't find immediately the cause in the brain. This is why his psychological theory is so abstract. He wants to make a connection to the brain and to neurons, but he has yet to find that kind of connection. And honestly, psychology is still in its infancy in that way. Psychology has still not been able to pattern the causes of psychological problems in the brain. So they still remain abstract, even today. We still must deal with theories of personality, even if we don't deal with Freud's theory of personality, we need some theory, and that theory does not yet have a satisfying biological explanation.